The future is now for some of these draftees, and MLB.com senior writer and MLBPipeline.com Jim Callis writes that he thinks the Phillies had a pretty good weekend, and of course they had the first pick in the draft and the first pick of the rounds to follow there, so they would have the best chance each round to get a good player. We'll see who stood out and get a look at some of the area guys like Jason Groome and some of the other players here with Jim on the Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN. Hey, Jim, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you doing, Mike?
We're doing real good, and I know reading some of the stuff that you wrote about the Phillies in the past is one of the problems why they are where they are is because the first round in the draft has not been kind to them in recent past, and now they finally get the first pick in the draft in a year where there was no clear-cut number one guy. So first off, let's go back to Thursday, and Mickey Moniak, what did you think about them taking him number one?
I like the pick. I mean, yeah, you wish when you're picking number one that you have Steven Strasburg or Bryce Harper sitting out there and it's an obvious guy, but I thought they made a very good pick. I mean, there were a lot of rumors they were going to take A.J. Puck, the Florida Gator left-hander, number one for weeks. Even going into the weekend, I thought he was going to go number one, and I'm not the hugest A.J. Puck fan in the world. I think he's got big stuff, but I think he's more thrower than pitcher, and he's real inconsistent. I love the Moniak pick, and talking to a lot of guys, I think a lot of teams would have taken Moniak number one. I mean, there's a lot of things he has going for him. One, I mean, he's an up-the-middle guy, and this draft was not a good draft in terms of up-the-middle players, but he's 100% center field. You're not worrying about that at all. I think he's probably the best hitter in the high school ranks in terms of hitting for average. He's a plus runner. That's not going to change. You got 3+ tools right there. I had some guys drop a 70 on him on the 2080 scouting scale for hitter. I think the power's coming. He's not going to be a big impact guy, but it could be like a 12 to 15 home run guy. I look at this guy as a guy who could hit 280, 300, be a big on-base guy, hit 10, 12, 15 home runs, steal 25+ bases, play you a good center field. He's got a huge floor for a high school guy. For a high school guy, I think he's a really safe bet, and the ceiling's very high too. So I think they took, I would have probably taken Kyle Lewis from Mercer number one. That's just me, but there's nothing wrong with Mickey Moniak. I like that pick, and I like it a lot more than if they'd taken A.J. Puck number one.
All right, they did go with a pitcher in round two with Kevin Gowdy. Now, UCLA's probably not happy that they land two of these guys, but he's a guy that a lot of people really like in that spot.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Kevin Gowdy is, I mean, he was the first-round caliber arm, and this year the draft was loaded with high school arms, and in general, because the industry views high school arms as risky, they don't go as high as they're necessarily rated. But that's essentially like getting a first-round guy taken there at the top of round two. And the nice thing is with the bonus pool system, the way it's set up, they give the first 3 or 4 teams in the draft like extra money or the assigned value for the number one overall picks more than the guy's going to get. Like the assigned value for bonus pool purposes for the number one pick overall is $9 million. Mickey Moniak's not going to get $9 million. He might get $6. So that gives him $3 million extra dollars to go ahead and use on other picks. And I think Kevin Gowdy will benefit from some of that largesse. And he had a high price tag out there. And the Phillies' hope was that somebody would fall to them. I think that was pick 42. Somebody good would fall to them at 42, but you don't know. You just don't know until the draft unfolds. And I think they had to be very happy that somebody the caliber of Kevin Gowdy was sitting there for him at 42.
Jim Callis, MLB.com, MLBPipeline.com takes a look at the draft and minor league players. And that was the first day. Now, you really thought they did well on Friday, the second day of that draft, which is when people really start to, not know who some of these guys are. But, Jim, you can fill these people in listening that there are some guys out there that really stood out that the Phillies took on Friday.
Yeah, I wrote, I think, back-to-back days. I wrote the Phillies had the best second day of the draft of anybody, and the next day I wrote they had the best overall draft of anybody. But they came out right away in round 3 and took another guy who's going to require extra money, but they'll have it to sign him, a kid named Cole Stovey, third baseman, high school third baseman from Omaha, who has a long track record of success with Team USA, great makeup guy, but also a very good bat, and started hitting for more power this year. I mean, you could have a 280, 20-homer third baseman in him. They came back and they got 2 pretty good lefties, so I think we'll move fairly quickly. JoJo Romero of Yavapai Junior College was the hero. Yavapai actually won the National JUCO Championship, and he won the final game. And Cole Irvin from Oregon State, who had Tommy John surgery in the past, but is back from that now. And I think you could have a couple lefties who could move there very quickly. And I really like their 6th-round pick a lot, too. David Martinelli from Dallas Baptist. I was saying before, it's not a good draft for up the middle players, especially college-wise. And I honestly, I thought Dave Martinelli had a chance to go in the second or third round. There were some questions on his back coming into the year, but he had a better approach this year and really hit better, and he's tooled up. And I thought he was a steal in the sixth round.
Jim, what was your take on Jason Groome? He's from about half hour, 40 minutes from us. There was a lot of news about him leading up to the draft. He was kind of falling down, and then he changed colleges right at the last minute there. He was deciding to leave Vanderbilt and go to a junior college there. What was your take on Groome as a prospect and where he ended up going to Boston at 12?
Yeah, well, I mean, depending who you talk to, it's not so much necessarily that Jason Groome decided to leave Vanderbilt, but Vanderbilt decided to leave Jason Groome. So depending who you talk to, you hear that story a little differently. But, we had Jason ranked as, in terms of talent, the best pure prospect. We had number one on our MLB Pipeline top 200. You're talking about a guy who could throw in the mid-90s. He might have the best curveball in the draft, especially on the high school side. It's a good body. It's a good delivery. There's no red flags on the field. I mean, there are maturity issues that continue to dog him, and I think it made some teams uncomfortable. And then as he starts to fall, you wonder, well, if this guy's expectations at the top of the draft, are we going to be able to sign him lower in the draft? I was, if you told me, a couple weeks ago that he would last 12 picks, I would have said, wow, that would seem like kind of low. Although I'll be honest, going the night before the draft, when we were doing our mock drafts, I thought the highest he was going to go was 6 to the A's and maybe 8 to the Padres. And then, like about an hour and a half before the draft, we were kind of tweaking our mocks one final time, and I had the idea that he wasn't going to go in the top 10 picks, and the Red Sox, I kind of got some confirmation the Red Sox probably taking the 12, but it'll be interesting. I mean, if he can, keep his head screwed on straight, that could be a steal for the Red Sox because he's a supremely talented pitcher. I mean, I was talking about A.J. Puck from Florida before, had a chance to go number one. I think Groome's stuff is just as good. And I think he might already be a better, pitcher in terms of polish than A.J. Puck is after 3 years of college. And I think he's a better athlete than A.J. Puck. I'd much rather talent for talent have Groome than A.J. Puck.
Jim Callis.
I should say much rather, but he's better.
Yeah, Jim Callis with us here, MLB.com, MLB Pipeline. He's at Jim Callis MLB on Twitter. Jim, the most 40 picks, all right? These teams get 40 players. What percentage of those 40 players is expectation? If one guy makes it to the majors, is that a successful draft? I mean, 3? I mean, what do you guys look at to say that was a couple years down the road to say that ended up being a good draft for a team?
Yeah, the typical team will probably sign 25 of those guys because you'll take some of those guys. Honestly, are filler. So that the Jason Groomes and Mickey Moniaks of the world have guys to play with at the lower levels of the minor league system, but. In a typical draft, this always shocks people. I'd say in a typical draft, you might have 6 or 8 really true stars in the draft. That's it, 6 or 8. And then you might have another 24 players who, wind up being, regulars in a lineup or starters in rotation or a closer for, 3, 4, 5 years, or more. But, you're talking about 30 guys who are really long-term contributors, and everybody after that's kind of, to be honest, everybody after that's really kind of a complimentary player. So, I mean, if you can get, if you were to get 2 guys that you could play regularly in the draft and then some complementary pieces, you're doing pretty well, which seems kind of crazy considering that you're drafting 40 guys, but that's the reality of it. A lot of players are signed internationally, and guys will ebb and flow. I mean, there'll be some years if we go back and look at this draft 5 years from now, there'll be some guys who are like, man, that guy's a really good player, and then if we go back and look at that draft 10 years from now, we'll say, that guy wasn't very good. Like, he had one good year, and so be it. But, yeah, if you, for any of these teams, if you got like a guy who made a couple all-star teams, another guy who's a regular for 4 or 5 years, and then some got fill-in pieces here and there, that's actually a pretty good draft.
Jim, let me get your opinion on this. All right, so we're in an area where Mike Trout lives. Okay, so he's within about 40 minutes from us. How much does having a player make it from that particular area impact the draft in terms of people saying, you know what? That kid Trout made it, and he played in that area. We're going to look over there and try to get guys from around there. How much does history and players that make it from a particular spot, carry over to scouts and the draft?
I think it helps a little bit, although, I mean, it's more than a 1 year, one player trend. I mean, a guy like Trout comes around once in a generation or so, but, I do know teams who will look, state by state, okay, what has the state of New Jersey produced in the last 5 or 10 years in the draft. And if you see there's a lot of high picks, hey, maybe we ought to devote more resources there. Or hey, if you see some places producing a lot of high picks and they aren't panning out, like, okay, maybe those guys are overrated. The one thing is, though, I don't think too many guys get missed just because you have the showcase circuits they have for high school guys these days where you can basically play all summer, and in warm weather areas you can play all winter, which isn't necessarily a good thing for pitchers. But, you can see these guys against top competition, and so you rarely get missed. But all that said, Trout went in the first round, and even though you have all these teams, we almost took Trout, or we would have taken Trout, or we were going to take Trout. Like, I'll be honest with you, I don't think there were that many teams that had the Angels who were really on him. I think the Yankees legitimately were on him a couple picks later, but, Mike Trout was not he was considered a first-round guy, but it was a late first-round guy. It wasn't like you had 30 teams saying, we think this guy's going to have the best first 4 seasons of a baseball career that anybody's ever had. And there's some revisionist history going on. You have a lot more teams claiming they were higher on Mike Trout than they actually were at the time.
With good reason. He's made it pretty well, obviously, and was the 26th pick in the draft. So it's very inexact. Unlike basketball and football, a lot of people, even I guess, trying to follow so many players. When you throw the high school players into the mix with college and then junior college players as well, there has just got to be so much studying and information. How long is this process to put together? How do you even get a board together to know where to start? Like we were talking the other day. All right, Moniak's hitting 476. There's a guy, probably in every high school league hitting 476. What separates Moniak's 476 from some other random guy?
Well, on the high school end of things, I don't think people really look at the stats that much. If somebody was hitting 276, you might be like, okay, what's going on here? Why is he not performing? But, like I said, these showcase circuits, you go out and watch these guys with Team USA or, in all these various, showcases where they face good pitching during the summer. And, you ask how soon does it begin? It begins already. Perfect Game has a national showcase going on. I don't know if it started over the weekend or if it didn't, it starts any day now. And so basically you have all these scouting directors and scouts are, finished with the draft, and then it's immediately off to the Perfect Game national showcase to start looking at guys for next year. So it basically never ends.
Well, let me ask you this: how important these days is your high school career?
To be honest, I think as a high school player, what you do on that showcase circuit is more important because you're facing much better competition. The problem is when you go evaluate any of these guys in high school, like, we'll use Jason Groome as an example. Jason Groome in New Jersey this year. The stuff looks great. But, if you're just evaluating performance and, how many strikeouts he has or, how many no-hitters he throws, how many pro-caliber guys is he facing in a typical New Jersey high school lineup? Like none? One? So it's like you can't – the guys, it's almost more important. You judge these guys more on what they do during the summer against better competition than you do what they actually do in high school. Now, that said, if you come out and have a horrible year in high school, that's going to hurt you, and they will check that. Groome was great last summer, too. Guys were still going to come back and see him to make sure the stuff was as good as they saw, rather than just say, well, he was clearly the best guy last summer. We don't need to see him. But yeah, I actually think what you do during the summer and the fall, there's a big showcase in Jupiter, Florida in October. Well, that matters a lot more than what you actually do during the spring in terms of a performance standpoint.
Jim Callis, senior writer, MLB.com, MLBpipeline.com. He's at Jim Callis, MLB, for more on the MLB draft and all the minor league stuff. Obviously, in Philadelphia, we're looking a lot at the minor leagues because this team has an eye on the future right now. And, Jim, we appreciate all the work you did covering in the draft and jumping on board with us here today.
Yeah, it's good talking to you, Mike. Take care.